Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. Welcome to another episode of the CarryTrainer Higher Line podcast. I wanted to be like super annoying radio guy, and staring at your face while I was doing it made me unable to keep a straight face. Got my buddy Tony Blauer. Tony's been in the field of keeping people alive since like 1873. I know you'd appreciate that, only because you always make the old man jokes.
Yeah, I do, and I didn't realize that I'd gone back that far, but that's pretty close.
You have been training for 40 years.
Yeah.
You told me that number the last time we did a podcast.
It's crazy. So I'm 58 now, and I started actually doing like competing in wrestling when I was 7 or 8 in elementary school, so I've been doing some sort of event where two bodies collide and their skin smacking like that for 50 years.
Wow.
It's crazy.
That's a long time.
It is. I was just thinking about it this week, and it kind of, you know what? I was in an Uber up in LA, some meeting going to, and the guy was asking me what I was doing, and I was in a talkative mood, and I told him, and he said something that I'd never even thought about. He said, like, you've been in business like for almost 40 years. I go, yeah. He goes, like, you should celebrate that, man. That's like an amazing, I didn't jump around. I mean, I've been teaching self-defense since 1979.
Right. You weren't off selling cars for a couple years and then working at the feed store. And
yeah, no, I had a bunch of jobs like as a teenager, but when I went to work for my dad in the manufacturing business he had in 1980, and I worked there for 5 years. But while I was doing that, I still worked 7 days a week. I would leave work at 5 or 6 o'clock, and then I would go teach anywhere from 20 to 30 private lessons a week, 7 days a week. I did that for 5 years until I realized, I hate being in business, in this particular business. And I was talking to this yesterday to one of my team where we're actually talking about my son and him. He's interning at a pretty cool CrossFit facility up in Venice, California, and he's doing all these things. And I said, like, everybody should be shoveling hay or doing some sort of thing that they hate, but they're deriving some benefit from it. Either their traps and their lats are getting strong because they're baling hay, and they're getting paid a little bit of money, but they hate it, so it directs them to what their passion is. And let me, before a bunch of people like message you going, I bale hay, Blauer. I was just using it as an example. You could love hay.
I baled hay as a child.
Right. And here's my thing is, like, I worked gas station. I worked as a janitor in when I was in university. Holy shit, that was the worst. I mean, like, cleaning up puke and vomit and shit. And I worked in a deli, and I worked in manufacturing. And throughout the day while I was working, regardless of the job I was doing, all I was thinking about was martial arts, self-defense, when I was going to work out and when I was going to teach. And that's really the deeper message to people is you and I, and we've talked about this, and I don't let people say, oh, I'm so blessed, I'm so lucky. I go, no, you worked hard, right? Yeah. You worked hard. And I know people are, and it's almost like a colloquialism. They just say it because it's just part of their culture, their upbringing. I just did a podcast with a good friend of mine, this guy Mark Chang, really, really sweet guy. But like every minute he'd go, I'm so lucky, I got to work with these Olympic athletes. They flew me out to, I go, Mark, you're not lucky. They didn't like close their eyes and flip through the yellow pages and go, oh, Mark Chang, let's just call up any random Chinese guy. And, no, dude, you're a famous trainer, right?
Right. You worked and developed.
You worked your ass off for decades so you're part of a very, very short list.
Do you think sometimes people do that because they don't want to come off proud or haughty or arrogant. Like I know I've got a friend that does that, and I know him well enough that I know it's his way of like deflecting praise. He wants to, like, I'm just this poor kid that grew up and had all these amazing things happen to me, and I'm just, aw shucks. When in reality, he knows he whoops some ass in life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all for transparency, and it turns a lot of people off. I'd probably be a lot more effectively successful if I played some of those games. I think a lot of it is about self-awareness. You know, if someone said to me, "Hey, you're going to double your income if from now on all you said is, I'm so grateful that and I don't know why this happened to me. I guess I was in the right place at the right time," and I couldn't do it because I can't be disingenuous. Like if you're ever at one of my classes, Mickey, and you say to me, "Hey, how did I do in that last drill?" and I redirect with some distraction, like, "Hey, what kind of pants are those? Are those the Vertex?" that means you sucked, because I'm never going to tell you that you did good when you didn't do good. Right. So I always warn people in the beginning. I go, "Listen, I'm here to make you safer. And so candy coating shit or whatever." But like all of this, it's just about that transparency and self-awareness. I went off on one of my rare tangents. I think some people are innocent when they say that they're uncommon. And so in that way, it's not disingenuous. It's really part of their character. With my friend Mark, it's so sincere, but I wanted him. It's like when I work with, I've worked with pro athletes, CrossFit, boxers, kickboxers, and I'm there for like some of the deeper, irreverent mindset shit that I do, right? It's not conventional. It's not psychobabble. It's not, and at some point we talk about rituals and luck, and I remind them, I go, "Listen, athletes, all athletes, including myself, we're all superstitious and we all have our rituals and stuff like that. And there's like little rituals I do, if I'm not feeling good about flying, or if I'm, somebody's getting a test in the hospital and it could be shitty. I'll do like little things like, okay, please let it be. Even though I don't believe in like a lot of that stuff, I just do it and I giggle at myself. Right. But I go, it can't hurt. And what I'm getting at is like, so here I am with Mark, and like every 3 minutes we would talk about something amazing he was doing, and he'd go, "I'm just so lucky." And I go, "Mark, none of that is luck, right? Luck is you booked to have an outdoor wedding and it didn't rain that day, and you booked your wedding 6 months outside. Like that's luck. Right? But you're not lucky that you found this perfect person because you had 9 relationships before, and you guys went to marriage counseling and you had a divorce and then you got remarried. It's not luck when you finally figure out what success is.
Right. I agree. Which is to my point. So, and this isn't a dig on Mark, because I'm sure he's a wonderful dude, but somebody that's achieved some level of success like that, they must understand the mechanisms that got them there. So, I don't know. I don't even know where we're going with this. It's just, I think it's an interesting look into the psyche.
Listen, like to just some closure on the point is, if it's innocent and like Mark, my buddy Mark doesn't turn anyone off when he says that. I just happen to be a full-time coach. And, I drive a lot of people crazy because I coach my wife, I coach my kids, I coach my, I remember my daughter was scared to go to a new school. She's 16 now. So she was like 11 or 12 and she's freaking out. And I came home from a trip and my wife says, "You deal with her." No, "Hello, honey. What'd you buy me?" It was just, "You deal with her." Right. So I go up to Olivia's room and Lula's there in bed, like looking at her iPad or whatever. And I open the door and I go, "Hey, everything cool?" And she starts, like, she was totally fine. And then she starts crying right away on cue, like a perfect actress, right? "I'm not going to school. You can't make me go to school. I'm not going to this new school." And so I go, "Hey, I don't know what's going on." And I did know what's going on. She was freaking out about changing schools. And, I said, "Hey, I just got home from a trip. I'm kind of like wired from the trip. I need some chamomile tea. We don't have any. You want to come in the car with me and go to Starbucks and get some tea with me?" She says, "Sure, Dad." And she's like sobbing in the car, and it's this whole like, act. And she's upset and scared, obviously. But, you know, what I did is I knew I got to get her out of the house. I got to get her away from Jess because they had an argument. No, you are going to school. No, I'm not. All that crap. We get the tea, we sit in the car, and I pop open my iPad to my cycle of behavior, which is the neural circuitry of fear. It's this little flow chart of here's your scenario, and this is the fear loop. And if you don't get out of the fear loop, you don't get on with your life. And it's this really simple thing that I designed in the 80s and have been using it with teams and units and organizations and people for years. And here's my 12-year-old daughter. Remember the stories about I'm always coaching, right? I pop open the iPad mini and I go, let's talk about school. And I pop open cycle behavior and my 12-year-old looks at me. She goes, really, Dad? Cycle of behavior? Right? Like she knew exactly what it was. And she was like, okay, here we go. Anyways, 15 minutes later, she's okay with going to school. It worked. But you know, for anyone listening and thinking about this and what we're talking about and what I'm trying to kind of crystallize here is that if part of your culture and part of your upbringing is to always say, you know, I'm blessed, I'm grateful, I'm this and that's cool if it's genuine. But even if you were at dinner with me, if we were close enough, like when I have an athlete that I'm working with who says, oh shit, and I go, what's the matter? They go, like, my socks, my lucky socks. I'll go, dude, if I put your socks in the ring against the other opponent, your socks are going to lose. Your socks have nothing to do with this. I know you think they're your lucky socks, but they're just socks, right? I'll do whatever I can to empower and help somebody self-actualize and realize that Mark, that wasn't luck. And Olivia, going to your school and having, you know, you're not lucky that you've got friends. You've got friends because you're a good person.
For sure.
Anyways, blah, blah.
I just did a discussion this morning about it's the Friday the 13th. As you know, we planned this for this day. Oops, let me shut that off so we're not getting vibrations. And
kind of scared.
Yeah, well, that was what I was talking about. Like, we joke about it, but they're like, the point you just made, people legitimately have these beliefs that I need my lucky socks, or old school, I can't walk under that ladder, or the broken glass, or the black cat, or whatever. These beliefs, and there's parts of the world, like I've got a family member from Africa, and they've got, where she's from, what I would deem to be completely irrational, lunatic level
right, ritual superstition.
Yeah, ritual superstition, like just shit that's like they murder children, babies, depending on like how much hair they had when they're born. They leave them out in the bush because they think the kid's a demon. Like, I'm like, whoa. And so we're talking about that today in this discussion, like, and I'm agreeing with your point that these beliefs that we have we choose to believe them. I choose to believe that my socks are going to make me win or not win. I choose to believe that I'm going to go to school and have a terrible time, or go and have a good time, whatever it may be. I think people don't like hearing that because it's like, well, it's not that easy.
Yeah. And here's the counterpoint after spending 10 minutes investing in that is if wearing your favorite socks makes you float like a butterfly more easily, then wear your socks.
What happens though when those socks wear out and become threadbare and they no longer can be worn? That's my question.
That's a problem. I guess it's time to retire at that point. but that's really the whole point, Mickey, right? That's really the whole point.
I've recently remodeled the basement here, and I haven't yet finished. We're still in my gun room, but the next room over is for recording. It's sound attenuated, floor to ceiling, double
attenuated. That's a nice word.
Thank you. I know you like words. Yeah,
I do.
Basically, that means that we've isolated vibrations from structure to structure, and then all of the ventilation system is closed off from the rest of the house. It's pretty sweet.
Wow, so, house, another big word. I like that.
House. Yeah, dick. Yeah. Let's talk. What we were just talking about, though, I think is what like you're most known for is the whole psychology of fear. Would you agree? Right. That's kind of like your bread and butter.
It's the most important thing I do. I don't know if it's the thing I'm most known for. It's weird. It depends if you're talking to a hater or a lover. Should I say lover or fan? I don't know. But
I don't know.
Most people go, oh, s.p.e.a.r, and then they do the finger splayed outside 90. Oh, s.p.e.a.r guy. And I'll be in an airport, s.p.e.a.r guy, and like, I'm like, oh yeah, hey, it's a little embarrassing. And I go like, hey, do you have a question? Because they put up their hand when they do it. And, but I think the mindset stuff, when I peel every single metaphoric onion on why this happened or that didn't happen, it comes down to everyone's ability to manage their fear in the moment. Whether it's calling somebody, asking somebody on a date, defending yourself, pulling a gun, pulling a trigger, it's all about mitigating, managing fear, and either having fear stymie, create some sort of hesitation, some doubt, some anxiety, or being able to see fear as a fuel and use it. I think that's the most important shit I do. And some people who are critical thinkers, like I had a good friend of mine, J.C. Glick, who's retired U.S. Army. He came and spoke at my Combatives camp a couple of years ago, and he was talking to we had a breakout session on Friday for all the cops and military that were attending. And he said, I know a lot of you came here to learn finger splayed outside 90 and understand the cross-extensor reflex, and the physiology stuff that Tony does is important, but the really important stuff he does is the mindset. So here's a guy who had been downrange multiple times and went from this mindset of like, I hope I don't get captured or killed on this mission, to this more of a pervasive hunting mindset after doing some training where I was able to, through whatever I do, inspire some sort of paradigm shift that we would just assume everyone would have. Mm-hmm. Right? Just, and they don't, I mean, my biggest clients, my most frequent clients for the last almost 3 decades are law enforcement and military. So, they bring us in for our force on force scenario training and the s.p.e.a.r system, how to weaponize the startle flinch. But what they get, whether they realize it or not, is a very, very deep dissection into the neural circuitry of fear and how the mind navigates shit between reptilian brain and cognitive brain dissonance.
Mm-hmm. Let me sidetrack for a minute, just so we'll come back to this. So, for those that don't know your program, the s.p.e.a.r system, you just talked about weaponizing the flinch. So let's talk a little bit about the mechanical side of the house, and then we'll go back to the more heady topic.
Yeah. So, what do you want? Just like a Reader's Digest? What the hell, s.p.e.a.r?
Yeah, the Reader's Digest. So you've got this viewpoint that we all have this startle flinch, and we can weaponize it into a response.
Yeah. So let me make a correction here. I don't have this viewpoint. This is part of physiology.
This is where the wheels fall off, where you have the haters, because then you say that and they're like, no.
Yeah. Well, and so if you study anything scientific, you'll understand that every single human, if they don't have some sort of injury to an element, a part of their brain that changes this relationship to these, the startle flinch, is a physiological DNA level reflex in everybody. And it was originally designed. One of its functions was to protect us from danger. Right? If danger, the whole danger close thing, the hands come up, cover the head, push away danger. Those are two kinetic chain movements that at the moment you realize, oh shit, something bad really close, the hands will come up, the eyes will close, the head will turn, you kind of move away, you get this oblique angle. If time and space permits, the kinetic chain of the hand will also, this is the cross-extensor chain, will start to push away danger. And what will happen without any cognitive thought is finger splay, your arm gets to outside 90. And people do that. And
I'm glad that I just phrased that the way I did, because you just gave a wonderful rebuttal to my.
I mean, and I tell people all the time, hey, so we've broken down the weaponizing of the startle flinch into 3 distinct awareness phases, because it's not 3 different moves. It's primal, protective, and tactical. Primal is what your body wants to do prior to any training. So right now, Mickey, if a small bomb went off in your room right now, you would start a flinch, right?
Yeah.
If you heard a crack in the ceiling and you looked up and one of the panels or a light came down, you'd cover your head. You wouldn't even think about it. If you and I were walking on a walk and there was a pit bull came running and barking, but we didn't know it was going to stop at the end of its property because it understood its territorial imperative ended here. As soon as that dog went and came at us, we would both go, oh shit. We would both, our hands would recoil and then we'd push away danger. People do this all over the world. And we have tons of evidence that we show in the trainer courses. And the evidence that we show has.
Would you do that if she was coming at you?
I don't know that no, that is a very, very cute dog. That dog was so relaxed. I actually thought it was a stuffed animal.
Yeah, she's like, what's up? It's your voice.
That was so funny. And for people who are only listening to this podcast, you have no idea what happened, and people watching it will. But and so the primal part is the hardwiring in us. The protective part is if there is space between you and the imagined threat. And then the tactical part is where it's like classical conditioning, Pavlovian conditioning. That's where our work comes in, where we've got these, to sound official sounding, proprietary drills. These are just drills that I've worked on for decades where I go, if somebody does this drill, this is going to be the result, right? And it's their cue, finger splayed outside 90, front towards enemy, get in this stance, and suddenly you what you've done is you've optimized muscle recruitment regardless of gender or experience. And I was just interviewed by this guy Ryan Muncie, who wrote this really cool book called I just realized the name of his book.
I saw you just post
Your Feelings.
Yeah. Your feelings. I saw you posted that.
And he's got a background in neuroscience, and so he was fascinated with the stuff. And he just sent me a video. We did this impromptu thing on the side of the street where I was explaining this whole kinetic chain and stuff. And he did this like he said something that only like a guy with a neuroscience background could say. He goes, well, that's just simply, and I'm like, holy shit, did we get that on film? And I got to study it because it was amazing. But what I'm saying is, and we've got, like in our instructor development classes, we've got slides and quotes from books on neuroanatomy and neuroscience and brain-based learning. And I was doing this stuff 20, 30 years ago. And in the last 10 years, there's been so many discoveries on neuroscience and how the brain learns and neurons and myelinization and all this amazing stuff, where I look at this, Mickey, and honestly, and this is like, I'm not going to say, oh, I was so lucky. I was so intuitive. The stuff that we were doing has been corroborated by like all this science. Like it's awesome. Why it's freaking awesome. And people confuse when I go, hey, I can teach you to defend yourself in a day if you're just the average citizen, and people lose their shit over that because through their cognitive dissonance and unconscious bias, they heard me say you can learn jiu-jitsu in a day, or right. you can learn to shoot like you or Barrett or Pat or sure. in a day. Like, and you can learn martial arts in a day. You can learn to box in a day. No, you can't. But you can learn how to detect, diffuse, and defend, and some gross motor quarter extremity primal gross motor movements that are built on an 80,000-year-old DNA of this movement of pushing away danger. When we teach people how to weaponize it, it's the split jerk of self-defense. The most powerful, strongest lift you can do, whether you got good Olympic form or not, is a split jerk. And so the movement
explain the split jerk so everybody knows.
It's an Olympic lift.
Okay.
So, so if you were looking at Olympic weightlifters, the maximum weight, the most explosive movement is a split jerk. And so visually what happens is I recoil from the flinch. If my mic is the bad guy and all of a sudden he's grabbed my throat, or a gun comes up, or he goes to throw a punch and my hands come up, what we're teaching people is at a physiological level, if you poke a single cell amoeba under a microscope with a pinprick, it'll pop away from that pinprick. So at a cellular level, we move away from pain. So the counterintuitive correction we make when we say weaponize the flinch is when a threat comes towards us, your body at a cellular level, at emotional, psychological level, wants to move away from the danger. But the only way to take care of the problem is to move towards the danger. So there's some deep psychological stuff that we do in class. But what we're teaching people is that when you're flinching like this, you're actually coiled up almost like a cobra. Your body is locked and loaded. And so in this moment, when you flinch, you inhale. Like there's either a minor or a major, oh shit, right? And inhale. So if I said hit somebody as hard as you can, would you inhale or exhale before you hit? You would inhale, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And so I flinch and then I go wham and I explode, and these double palms coming to your fucking head turn you into a human Pez dispenser. And it's a core to extremity movement that explodes out of your legs, out of your hips, out of your arms. And I can hit a bag with this double palm movement harder than I can sidekick it. And that might seem ridiculous.
No, I don't think so. You've practiced it. You've honed it.
Yeah, but I'm talking about just raw force generation. I'm not talking about the technique, because I can teach.
But I'm saying you've learned to link from your feet to your hands. You're doing what you're teaching now. I wasn't saying that you only can do it because of years of practice.
The epiphany that I want you and your listeners to have is that how often you watch MMA and kickboxing?
Some, yes.
Yeah. How often do you see a sidekick used?
A lot.
Hardly ever. What?
A sidekick? A sidekick?
Like a regular sidekick?
Okay, yeah, not often enough.
Versus a round kick or a front kick. If you look, I'm talking about pro fighters, you'll see like 3 people effectively use a sidekick. If you can go back like 20 years looking at kickboxing, and you'll go, nobody uses a sidekick, right? It's just a hard shot to get. It's not that they can't do it. Don't confuse it. It's just that it's a hard thing to time and get in. And what I'm saying is the world's best fanatics can't make a sidekick happen in a force-on-force encounter. It's sparring, kickboxing. It's just not a high percentage move. But I can teach somebody in an hour how to go, please don't hurt me, and smash somebody in the head like that, because it's primal gross motor. There is no fine or complex motor skill to it. It's so simple. Why? Because I can, the realization that we can invoke in the class is that this reflex is at least 80,000 years old in our history. It's a hardwired reflex. Plus, it's a movement that you've used all your life. You've just never thought about. It's the same kinetic chain as a push-up. It's the same kinetic chain as, like, when I'm working with CrossFitters who've never done any martial arts or self-defense, I go, how many push-ups have you done in your 2 years or 5 years of CrossFit? They go, I don't know, thousands. I go, how many wall balls, right? You know, the wall motion. They go, I don't know. I go, how many burpees? They go, I don't know, thousands. I go, this is the same kinetic chain as double palm striking some in front of you. And you could do it to the sternum, to the throat, to their face. It's the single simplest move you could teach anybody. Why? Because it's congruent with fear. It's congruent with the startle flinch and the movement of recoil, push away, danger. The first 2 stages of that are neurologically wired in every one of us. Mm-hmm. And so all we need to do is get people to realize, oh my God, I've got this. I don't like the term muscle memory because it doesn't work, but I've got, you know, it's not a real concept. But I've got 2/3 of this system in here. What I need to do is improve my awareness, my situational awareness, my self-awareness, and understand what happens if I don't fight back. That's a big thing in our fight, in our self-defense courses is the question is what it costs you if you don't fight back. And what is that psychological reframe? So the neat thing is the biggest and most important stuff we do is like the simplest stuff to learn, but the hardest stuff to apply, which is why I say the ability to protect yourself or a loved one is arguably the single most important skill you could have. But for guys who are guys and gals who aren't like you and I, and what I mean by that is, like, we think about self-defense every day. It's our lifestyle, right? Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of people that think like, oh, if I think about it, it might happen to me. I'm not going to think about it. I'm not going to, or they've got this other thought of, well, it's going to take years and years and years to train to be able to do it. It's if I had $1 for every person I bumped into in the last 30 years who said, I always wanted to learn how to defend myself, I'd have a lot of money in the bank, and they don't do anything about it.
Which is, I think, human nature for a lot of things. I'd like to run a marathon or,
That'd be fun to do that, but this bag of Doritos and this beer is too important right now. It's calling me.
Good right now. I actually don't like Doritos, but the beer sounds delicious.
I don't even no idea why I said that. I don't.
On that point, though, it seems like there's definitely. I like very simple stuff. Like if people ask me, like, what's the best thing I can do? I tell them, like, start out, get your body in good physical condition. Like not that like you're not allowed to study martial arts unless you're physically fit, but you should be working on that simultaneously. Yeah, you can keep breathing and not be out of breath and injured. But I always tell folks, go find a local boxing gym and just start figuring out how your body works, how a punch works. You start to see what people's body language looks like when they're striking. I just always felt you learned a lot doing that. But this was the point I was going to make. I remember guys, like I started at a Taekwondo gym when I was in grade school 30 plus years ago. And I don't want to knock on Taekwondo, but the stuff I learned there, other than showing up to class and having fun with other kids and stuff, none of it is applicable to the things I do now. Teach. I mean, some fun like high kicks and things like that, but I remember some guys that I met later in life that had like black belts in some of that style of art, or those arts and those styles. And my brothers and I would just whip their ass when we would be in the backyard screwing around. But they had black belts, and we were just like farm kids that were rough and tumble. And sometimes it was grown men, and we were just teenagers. But the stuff that they had ingrained in themselves was completely useless against somebody that had any level of aggression, because they were used to like practicing all of these wonderful moves.
Did you, when you were doing that, did you have initially trepidation and fear because you heard they were black belts, and then you'd start sparring or grappling and then realize, holy shit, these guys, they're weak?
Well, I think for me, that's a good question. I remember one time in particular, my dad's the kind of guy, I love my dad, but my dad's the kind of guy that, like, to my dad, all policemen are badasses because they're cops. I mean, they're a cop. Right. And if you got a black belt, like, they don't just hand these things out. Like, my dad never spent any time in like a karate dojo or gyms like that. So to him, this was a friend of his. He had a guy over for a barbecue, and he's like, "Hey, Mick, this guy's got a black belt in XYZ martial art." And I'm like, "Oh, cool." So we're talking because I practice different stuff. And so my dad's like, "Why don't you show my son some stuff?" So we're in the dining room. All the families are in there now. There's like 30 people over for a barbecue, and this guy's going to demo some stuff on me. I was like 16. I was a wiry kid. I was probably 140 pounds when I was 16, maybe 150. And this is a grown-ass man, you know, in his early 40s. And he's like, basically wants me to stand there while he beats me up. And he wasn't hitting me full force. And so I kept like just letting him do this. And I go, "But what if I like just do this, you know, like start blocking you so you can't hit me?" And he's like, "Well, don't do that because I'll hit your elbow." "Yeah, but I want you to, you know, like I don't just want to stand here." So eventually I did a double leg takedown on him. And he goes, "Well, you can't do that." Well, and now we're on the carpet in the living room. So we stood up, and he went to kick me. He wanted to like try to like pretend like he was going to kick me in the neck. And I just ducked underneath and grabbed him underneath his leg and again swept him and took him down to the floor. "Yeah, but you can't do that." But I just did, you know, like it worked. So we did that a few times. And then we actually I pissed him off, you know, like when the play time turns to real time. And he like was squeezing me, telling me, "All right, that's enough," because he was getting embarrassed. Right. And then my teenage boy muscles took over. And I got in trouble because I lost it in front of a group of people. Because then he started to hurt me, wanted to like show that now I'm just going to physically be stronger than you. And I let loose on him. I punched this dude like 8 or 10 times, tears streaming down my face, you know, like not because I was hurt.
Right. Angry. Like,
just angry. It was like, you want to show off in front of all these people? You're a black belt and you just got your ass handed to you by a freshman in high school. Suck it, bitch. Yeah. Pardon me. It all just came back. It all just
feel better, man.
Yesterday. Okay? No, but I think that is a big misconception that I want people to understand. Like, to your point, it doesn't take a long time. It definitely takes an effort. And I wouldn't go stand in the ring with Chuck Liddell and be like, "Oh, I'm going to whoop your ass," or you know, Manny Pacquiao or something, because that's a different level of person. But the average individual walking the street doesn't need that many skills to be able to effectively defend their physical being, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I mean, listen, you know, that statement is controversial to somebody who has what I call the unconscious bias, where they get information and then they run it through like the scenario. They manifest the scenario in their mind where a generalized statement would be invalid, and then they go, "That's bullshit." I don't know if that was maybe a little too psycho.
I got what you're saying. So just so the listeners are on the same page, you're saying, well, like, what if 3 guys jumped you in a dark alley and you had nothing on but Speedo and no weapons? What are you going to do? You're little, I don't need a bunch of stuff.
Right. Or they'll go, well, how would that have worked during that active shooter situation? And they like, you know, like they'll look at like the darkest example.
Mm-hmm.
That's an anomaly in the statistics of violence, right? And that's why I said I can teach somebody in a day the average person. If you come to me and you go, hey, you know, in my previous life, I was, you know, a drug dealer and I got like 10 gangs after me and I got the mob after me and people are trying to kill me. I heard you can teach me in a day. I go, no, you need 2 days, not 1 day. Right. You know what I mean? Like if your scenario is different than, attempted rape, a carjacking, like there's certain scenarios that just happen to people because they lack situational awareness and they're not like a focused, dedicated hit, you know, or attack by somebody who's been like, you know, studying your behavior and movement and routine forever. And even in some of those cases, that type of stalker isn't expecting a fight. They're looking for a helpless, complacent victim. And the reality is you got to start somewhere, you know, right. If you're interested in understanding, let's say, a little bit about tactical medicine, you don't apply to medical school and you know start a track on like brain surgery. Okay. Maybe you watch some YouTube videos, stress inoculate on some of the graphics, then maybe you take a basic CPR first aid course for 4 hours, then you go, shit, I should do it more. You kind of vet your stages and yourself. That's what I mean by self-awareness. And then you do the 1 day course and you go, I need more. So I've had lots of people do the 1 day course and they go, I don't feel like I'm really safe, like you said. I go, well, like we went over these 10 principles of situational awareness, verbal de-escalation, and simple self-defense. And you could do all those things. You didn't know this and now you know this. Are you more dangerous than when you came in? Yes, I am. So what is it you're saying? Like, when you peel the onion, they go, I don't feel like I hit hard enough. I go, well, okay, now you want to go to a boxing gym or a Thai boxing gym, because now what you've identified is I feel like I could express aggression, but I don't feel like I'm generating the force I'd want if I hit somebody. Now we got a specific goal. Go to the boxing gym, go to the Thai boxing gym. Mm-hmm. I'm afraid, that's really good, but I'm afraid if I get knocked to the ground, and I wouldn't know what to do there. I'm afraid of the ground. I go, well, great. Now go to my friend's jiu-jitsu school and overcome your fear of the ground. Mm-hmm. You know? But it's like, I'm very, very methodical in how I dole out advice or direction. I got emailed 2 days ago where somebody said to me, hey, a buddy of his who's really into jiu-jitsu said that 80% of all fights end up on the ground. You know, what do you think? And my answer back was 100% of those 80% started standing. Right? You know, yeah. So the unconscious bias is if you completely myopically dive into the jiu-jitsu, then you predispose yourself to go to the ground. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing wrong with that if you're in an octagon or if you're in a grappling tournament, but there's potentially huge things wrong with that if you're in a parking lot or you're in a road rage situation or you have multiple assailants. Mm-hmm. And people will listen to that and go, oh, Blauer just dissed jiu-jitsu again. I love jiu-jitsu, sure. but, and I'm glad we're on video here because I have this.
He's getting a coffee cup.
This is a very special coffee cup.
Oh, I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's FOD.
But this here.
S.p.e.a.r.
Right? So this here, I'm going to make a joke here. If my wife was here, I would do it in front of her. I bought this in northern England near there's a city, and I forget the city right now because it was like 25 years ago. It's the oldest ruins of the Roman Legion era still around on English soil. There's just some parts of walls left and everything. It's a very historic city, northern England, and there's all these like little historic shops and antique shops. And I bought this. One is, of course, s.p.e.a.r. Systems. S.p.e.a.r. is an acronym, guys: spontaneous protection, enabling accelerated response. And I looked at it as this symbolic. So in the first PowerPoint I ever designed back in 1993, I said the spear is three-dimensional. In your fight, your point, you need to be the tip of the spear, as the expression goes. So you need to be thinking about impaling the attack, not running away. Don't confuse that with tactically disengaging from a threat, but that in an extreme close quarter, moving away from danger puts me in more danger at extreme close quarters. So we had spear as an icon, spear as a weapon, that the physical, when I startle flinch and my hands come up, look at the shape they take. Because
so what he's doing, guys, is he's got his hands up in front of his face, just like you would almost a boxing stance, except his hands are open and splayed.
And they're right in front of my face. So what that does is if you look at the geometry of this position, if I angle back, when you start a flinch and you go to push away danger, your hands loosely take on the shape of a spearhead. Right? And that can go in and smash somebody's face, neck, throat, sternum, etc. So it was spear. The understanding the psychological aspect of the spear was understanding the acronym. Understanding the emotional aspect of the spear is, hey, this is the choiceless choice. If I'm flinching, that means there's danger close. I can't do a timeout and go, what's going on?
Right.
We don't flinch at distance. We flinch up close. So when I saw this, I bought it, and it was quite expensive.
Is it bronze?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's green in places. You can't see it. And I look at this, look at the edges. Isn't that badass? And I look at this and I think about, you can see the little green.
Super cool, man.
Yeah. And I think about, like, whose spear was this? Was he a famous warrior? Did he die in battle? Did he die of old age? What's the energetic properties? If I'm very ritualistic and superstitious, as I told you earlier. Just a joke. But I look at this, and so I bought it for a lot of money. And my wife, when I showed it to her, she looks at it, and I'll just put it here against the white wall. She goes, that's the top of a fence. You just bought the top of a fence. And I was like, shut up, bitch. Right? Isn't that funny?
Yeah. That's super cool. So that's like 1,200 years old or something, 1,400 years old.
Yeah. So I love showing it when I can, man. If you can, I don't know, can you see up close?
It's not super clear, but I can see it. Yeah, that's amazing. So just so you know, what he's holding is a Roman era spear tip.
Yeah.
Spear point. In a U.S. Army first SFOD coffee mug, which is a
so what the I was going to show you something else, but I don't know where it is. What my point of the spear there is I think I was doing a little bit of a rant or riff on practicality and reasonableness and understanding. I've got, a gun vault and weapons and other knives and stuff like that. And if somebody broke into my house right now, my 5 dogs would go f***ing berserk. That would be my first alarm. But I wouldn't grab my spear head that's 1,200 years old. I grab my Glock. I grab my tomahawk. I grab a blade. And what I'm saying to your listeners is, like, it's okay to respect martial arts. And that's what I was talking about. I was talking about jiu-jitsu or taekwondo, or, like people who overly, if your goal is personal safety, then when the nutritional diet in terms of what your prescription of how you should feed yourself and your brain to learn about personal safety should not be and cannot be based on technical martial arts. It should only be looking at CCTV. This is something that I did. I was interviewed by SWAT magazine in, I think, 1995 at Smith & Wesson. Of course, I was doing there. And the guy was asking me a question over and over again. People go, well, what about this style? What about this style? And I go, listen, the bad guy controls the fight, not the good guy. The good guy needs to win the fight, but the bad guy dictates exactly what has to happen by his behavior, by his location, by the level of violence that he's presenting at that moment, because force must parallel danger. And the when you understand that shifts, there's a shift in psychology in how I'm going to train and what I'm going to look for. And this is what I've been telling people now for decades. It still goes over people's heads, where I go, listen, you reverse engineer your training by looking at how bad guys attack. If you want to understand what to do in a home invasion, a carjacking, and a mugging, and a rape, look at how the attacks happen and then go, what would be the butterfly effect here? How would I change this? And I want to throw in here this Star Trek metaphor that I always teach about. I go, the Star Trek model of training is when somebody physically looks at an attack and then physically says, this is the counter. And the Star Trek model, what I mean by that is that type of training. How do you get out of a headlock? How do you do a gun disarm? What do you do if a guy's got a knife? And I always would say, how did the guy get into your house, into your car, into your personal space? Did he beam there? Does he have like one of those machines on Star Trek where you just finished a workout, you were bent over, breathing heavy, and all of a sudden a headlock was on you?
Right.
Because nobody ever talks about the stimulus or stimuli before the attack. And when you practice your 10,000 gun disarms from the front and your 10,000 how to get out of a headlock, you simultaneously practice 10,001 times letting somebody stick a gun in your face, letting somebody put a headlock on you.
Can I get an amen, somebody?
Yeah, that's a big thing. That's a big epiphany. Threw in that big word for you.
I like that word.
That's a big light bulb moment in our courses when I go like, don't do that over and over again. Don't practice things you wouldn't let happen to you in the street.
We just did a discussion the other day on bedside safes. There's one that I've been doing some testing on.
My head was going somewhere completely different. As you said, bedside safe, and then I caught up with.
I'm going to tie it into what you're saying. So I'm showing this bedside safe. There's millions of kids around the world that over the course of guns' existences have been shot by mom or dad or somebody else's gun unattended. So not everybody's got grown children like us or is some single stud that can just leave their Glock out on the bedside. So like I'm talking about this. Yeah. I'm showing a simple demo of like waking up, having to get this gun out. And so what I'm explaining is like how long it takes. But then I said, hey, if the first indication of trouble is somebody's in your bedroom or at your bedside, you're if you wake up and there's some man over you, I don't care if the gun's in your hand, I'm going to kill you. And so like you just said, dogs are like number one deterrent. I've got a dog, I've got an alarm, I've got cameras, I've got glass break sensors. I want to wake up. Colonel Cooper had a hallway to his bedroom. At the end of the hallway was an iron gate that was only locked from the inside. So somebody had to make a big racket that he'd wake up and just shoot down the hallway.
Right.
You could take that anywhere, but to the point you're making, and I think people often, there's a couple folks that have gotten really famous lately analyzing CCTV footage like you're talking about. And what I don't like about what some of them are doing is they say, I understand what you're saying. What Tony's saying is look at what the bad guy's done in these situations. One of the things that you see often is they're ambush predators, right? They're not like walking up and saying, hey, you, I'm going to mug you. I'm going to give you a minute to get your gun belt on and all that. No, they come out of the shadows and clobber you. And what I see some of these guys doing is they're analyzing what the victims have done in successful situations, and they're saying, let's do that. And that's like, I don't know, like that maybe wasn't the best case scenario. Just because it worked there wasn't maybe what they should have done, because what you just said, they came from behind the curve and were maybe lucky that the bad guy wasn't as tenacious a fighter as some other guys are, and they happened to win. When a lot of times it's like, why did this guy come up behind you at the ATM at 2 o'clock in the morning on a dark street? Why are you at the ATM at 2 o'clock in the morning? And that's the part that drives me nuts. I just wanted to comment on that.
Yeah. So, I was going to say, like just to piggyback on that, that any message that has an air of certitude in this is why this is good, this is why bad, turns me off. I'll look at stuff, and like my common theme of stuff is always running it through our 3Ds filter: detect, diffuse, defend. You know, why did this happen? What was the failure during situational awareness? Where were we distracted? Now, okay, there was some talking. What was going on during the de-escalation attempt? Okay, and then, oh, look what happened during the fight. So we always run things through principles, as opposed to saying, you know, this guy won because he did that, do that, because that's almost like saying, you know, that's like I always say, hey, when you look at real violence, do you ever see technical martial arts being used to defend or protect? And the answer is no. You know, there's a very famous video that I did a dissection for on the very first video thing that Caliber Press ever did. They had me on, and it was 3 Israeli soldiers approaching what turned out to be a Palestinian terrorist who had a hidden knife. And the 3 soldiers walk up to him. They've triangulated on him, and they're standing there, and they're in full kit, helmets, body armor, long guns. And they're standing there, and they obviously, and it's a CCTV angle, and they obviously are asking him for his papers or documentation. And he reaches down and he pulls out his papers, but he's thought about this and practiced this, or he's really good at improvising and adapting. He palms his knife as he pulls the papers out. So you're drawn to the papers because that's what you asked for. And then he comes in, just like in Hitchcock Psycho, like an ice pick attack to subclavian artery in the throat. Now, these are 3 Israeli soldiers. This took place in Israel. And I preload this by saying, if there's going to be a place to learn authentic Krav Maga, it's going to be in which country? Israel. And do Israeli soldiers really fight, or are they like a theoretical military force? No, they really fight all the time. So here we have 3 trained active duty Israeli soldiers who are also trained in the most authentic Krav Maga. And this guy pulls out his documents, their eyes, you visualize, because you can't see the angle, their eyes, their heads are down, they're looking at the paper, all of a sudden that knife comes out. And what does this soldier do, who is the intended victim of the knife attack? Nothing. He flinches and gets stabbed. What did the other 2 soldiers do? Like, they didn't do wax on, wax off. They didn't do something out of Krav Maga. They didn't intercept. They didn't do their straight blast and their parry. They all flinched. He stabbed one guy, slashed another guy. They're all moving. There were, I think, 4 or 5 other soldiers out of frame who quickly oriented, because it's again, we talked about earlier on, danger close. What happens is when there's a sudden violence that you didn't anticipate, your cognitive brain is hijacked by the reptilian brain, the limbic system, the amygdala. This is the brain-based neuroscience that we've talked about for decades. So I would look at people and I go, why didn't that kickboxer do that move he was warming up and said he was going to do in the changing room? Oh, because fear with his plan, right? Mm-hmm. And it's easy to say, and a lot of people think Tyson said this, but it was actually the very famous heavyweight champion Joe Louis who said everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. But that goes around and everyone has that as a tattoo or a fortune cookie, but they're not looking at what that means. What that means is your amygdala and limbic system and your reptilian brain took control over what you were going to do, not your cognitive brain. And what we're doing is trying to get our cognitive brain to catch up to what the reptilian brain's doing. That's what we mean by weaponizing the flinch and using your fear as a fuel. So back to these Israeli soldiers, the 4 guys who are out of frame who didn't have the startle flinch response can look and go, visualize this, you're walking across the street and you're texting like an idiot, and all of a sudden you drop your phone, you go to pick it up, but because you're so focused on your phone, you forget that you're walking across the street. And all of a sudden you hear a car honk, you look up and you don't dive out of the way, you go, and you flinch and get hit by the car, or this car stops in time. But everyone on the sidewalk was going, look at this idiot, because they were detached from it. You know, it's much easier to be the courageous bystander than it is to be your own bodyguard, because one is, I'm looking at the violence going, I should do this, versus it coming straight at you and triggering a deer in the headlights response. So what happened was the soldiers that were offline pick up on this. Oh, there's a guy trying to kill one of our brothers in arms. And they introduced him very quickly to lead poisoning, and that terminated threat. But, you know, my clickbait on there, not to be a dick, was how come Krav Maga, how come these soldiers didn't use their Krav Maga? And what it was to get people this conversation that says, when a stimulus is introduced too quickly, your physiological response will bypass your cognition. If you want to be safer, you study my research, because it is like the fascia, it's the connective tissue between your bone and your muscle, that if you don't understand how to weaponize the startle flinch, you don't get back in the fight. If we go back to your scenario where you've got your biometric safe, you got it ready, you could have your gun out on single action, ready to go. And if you're asleep and you wake up and when you open your eyes, the guy's coming down with a knife, you're not grabbing your gun, your hand.
Yeah.
Right. And so what we tell you is you still need to weather the ambush to get back in the fight. And there's 2 complementary or parallel actions that have to take place. The startle flinch is what's happening with your reptilian brain. Your cognitive brain has to catch up and weaponize it using what's going on. So I went off on some crazy tangent.
No, I mean, the stuff that you're talking about is the bread and butter stuff that Tony Blauer has brought to the combatives world. And I want to touch on 2 points. One, I know people that don't agree with you because they come from a background that has served them well in the ring.
And they're also wrong, but that's a second.
I'm not going to.
I'm joking.
I know, but
hey, listen, hold that thought, because I want to just reintroduce the cognitive bias thing. Right? I've got a lot of people that I'm professional friends with who think I'm a fucking idiot with what I'm doing. Right? Because
I know lots of guys that know you, and none of them think you're an idiot.
I meant that to be self-deprecating. I don't mean that in the cerebral sense, but there's I remember teaching at, I'm not going to mention the police department, a major police department, and we're teaching an isolation drill on defending a tackle. And part of the progression was you're standing inside the reactionary gap. It's a law enforcement scenario. The guy target glances your gun. You see that as a pre-contact cue. Your hands start to go up. Your fingers splay. You're going, hey, sorry, I need you to step back right now. He looks at the gun. He makes a move. Boom, you hit him with the spear to knock him back, because you've got to catch up. You know, you've got to catch up what's going on. You don't just pull guard. Right. You don't just throw an uppercut. You don't just do a knee. Right? And that's the mistake people make, is they confuse technical with tactical. And the evidence is the CCTV. And I always tell people, it's not what you believe, it's what we see. You can believe whatever you want, you can disagree with me, but what you're actually doing is reminding us about cognitive dissonance and unconscious bias. I'm not saying you could learn jiu-jitsu in a day. I'm saying you could learn how to push away danger in a matter of an hour. Sure. And so here I am in this major police department, and I'm showing that we do this isolation, Mickey, where it goes, if somebody comes over the top with a punch and you micro flinch and push away danger, your hands will go over the top. You're not trying to do overhooks or underhooks. It'll just naturally cascade that way because of this primal movement. When that punch careens off your arms, that'll naturally, if the person is still motivated and driving forward, what's going to happen is they're going to run into some sort of like shitty body lock clinch. That spear will still keep them off there. There's lots of videos of these drills. And then we're showing how quite often, because they're driving forward and your hands are on top, that will predispose them to try to go for your legs or a tackle. But it's not like a fireman's carry. It's not a technical like double leg. It's not a single leg. It's a shitty tackle. And I always get people to laugh in class. I go, when people tackle you in a street fight, what kind of tackle is it? And here's a great example. A wrestler will say, ankle pick into a jiu-jitsu guy will go double leg. An MMA guy, I'll go, no, it's a shitty tackle.
Yeah,
let's watch. Well, and what I do is I put on like 10 videos of cops getting tackled, and none of them look like Randy Couture tackling a guy. None of them look like an MMA guy, because people don't tackle like that on concrete. What I'm demonstrating is the unconscious bias of somebody who focuses exclusively on a way to move and then disagrees with people who do things differently because they unconsciously don't see that that's their filter. They're looking at everything through that filter.
So the point I started to make about my Friday the 13th thing when we started the discussion here, one of the topic points was people believe in superstitions or certain belief systems because then they find things to support their belief. One, because they believe it, but because they are continually feeding it, their subconscious says, I need to go out and get data. I believe in ghosts. Thus, the creaking in my house is not just wood expanding and contracting. It's my grandma's spirit or whatever. That butterfly, because my friend that recently died loved butterflies. That's them. It's not just a butterfly, right? And I'm being smart, but somebody that spends their life practicing a certain art form is going to purely look for a way to make sure that the shit that they've invested their free time in is legitimate. And I think you and I would agree. I have no problem. A guy that spends 10 years practicing jiu-jitsu legitimately is a bad as long as his mind is prepared.
Have you seen the two pro MMA guys, UFC level jiu-jitsu MMA, who get hospitalized by 4 punks in Brazil? I don't believe I've seen it. It's a video. If you Google MMA Brazil fight, you'll see this. And I use it as an example. And again, like, I'm friends with like some of the most amazing professional fighters in the world. BJ Penn, Uriah Faber, Frank Mir. Like I've worked with some of these guys. I've known these guys for decades.
Bad men.
And I wouldn't want to fight any of them. I wouldn't even want to spar any of them, right?
Sure.
But we can have intelligent conversations. It's interesting. Like Frank Mir.
Frank Mir.
Yeah. Jiu-jitsu black belt, former world champ. He has guns and knives on him. He's not double-legging you in a fight, right? And that's why I brought the spear head out earlier, is I understand, like, I'm not going to go grab my replica black powder rifle and for posterity's sake, drop some gunpowder in it and poke it and put a ball in there and fire one inaccurate round. I want a contemporary weapon. I also want a contemporary mindset and a contemporary methodology where fighting is no longer codified. It's not like a match and where there's a tea ceremony before we try to kill each other. Shit happens really fast and it's really brutal. And what I'm getting at is I'm just trying to make people safer. And you could have like a 20th degree black belt in an art that you made up, that studying human physiology and studying the neural circuitry of fear will still make you safer if you haven't included that study in your stuff. Here, listen, if you're vegan and I go, I'm starving, make me something, you're only going to think about vegan recipes. If all you do is make sushi and I go, I'm starving, all you're going to give me is something with rice and raw fish. And so I talk about the categories. All martial arts are like these cooking metaphors where if I say to a Taekwondo or a Tai Chi or a classical Jiu-Jitsu practitioner, what would you do at an ATM machine if a guy did this? Whatever answer they come out with is going to be spit out by their arts computer if that's all they've studied. If I say to a MMA guy, what would you do here? Everything he's learned in the octagon or in his cage is going to influence what his response is going to be. If I say to a Krav Maga guy, same thing. And this is what I mean by the categories. Each category, I love athleticism. I love martial arts. I've been I've been watching this stuff for forever. And it was a student of mine getting his ass kicked in 1980 that changed my path. Where when he got his ass kicked and he told me what happened, I, for whatever reason, maybe I was lucky. Come on. When he told me what happened, it was like the god of self-defense hit me with this lightning bolt, Mickey, where I went, oh my God, we teach self-defense wrong. And I said we at the age of 20, and I meant it globally.
Yeah.
And for at 20 years old, that's a grandiose statement. But what I realized was I had been teaching him. Now think about every one of you here that learns martial arts. His father hired me. He's my first student. His father hired me because he was having a bully situation at school. He was 15 years old. His dad was old school. He didn't want him to get scarred. He knew I was a fanatic with boxing, wrestling, and Taekwondo. Those were my 3 arts. And this is like 15 years before the first UFC. First UFC is 1993. This is 1980, right? Mm-hmm. So 13 years before the first UFC. And I'm already blending wrestling, Taekwondo, and boxing. And I'm teaching this kid how to move. I'm teaching him how to kick. I'm teaching him how to grapple, clinch. We're sparring. We had the super safe helmets from Japan. I don't know if you know what those are. The old Kyokushinkai karate helmets. We're doing headbutts and elbows. It was real street because I was heavily inspired by Bruce Lee. And I blended. It was eclectic. He gets into a fight at school where the pre-brief to the fight was, I said, Mitch, I'm a very moral, ethical, integrity conscious person. There's no retroactive. You're not going to sucker punch this kid. You're not going to do anything. Right now it's verbal abuse. The school won't do anything. But the moment he puts his hands on you, it changes, right? Understand that force is parallel dangers. You can't go crazy. You're 15 years old. You want to change your life. But right now you're telling me he's just verbally abusing with his friends and it's getting on your nerves. You think there's going to be a fight and your dad's paying me to come to your house once a week for $20 an hour. $20 an hour in 1980 was like, oh my God. I was getting $4 an hour working for my dad. I was like, yes, bread, man. And so the 3 months goes by, which ironically is the lead time for a professional fighter agreeing to a fight. Trains for 3 months. Mitch is late for school, late for class. He's running through the hallway. This kid trips him, sees him running, trips him. He goes flying in front of a bunch of people. All the kids are laughing at him. He's 15. He's embarrassed. He grabs his books and he's muttering as he does it. He goes, you piece of shit. And the guy goes, what did you call me? And it was the first time Mitch had asserted himself. And he walks up to him. He goes, what did you call me? And Mitch is like angry. He goes, what did you trip me for? Because I felt like it. What are you going to do about it? Because you're an asshole. I don't even know who you are. You've been bugging me since school started. The guy's like, what are you going to do about it? And he pokes Mitchell. So Mitchell remembers as soon as he touches you, right? But Mitchell's late for class. He's angry. He's disoriented. He's got his books in his hands and he grabs the kid and slams the bully against a locker bank and says, don't touch me. And so how I learn about the story is I come to Mitchell's house for his lesson and he's furious and he's fuming. And I go, what happened? And he starts to tell me this and he stops there. He says, I grabbed him. I slammed him against the locker bank. I said, don't ever touch him again. I go, and he looks down and he looks up and he looks down and he says, he punched me in the face really hard to drop me. I go, what do you mean he punched you? How did he hit you with? He says, with a left hook. I didn't even see it. I go, well, what? I go, why didn't you slip or bob or parry? And he goes like this. Those of you who can't see this, I'll try to describe it, but I'm going to visually do it for Mickey first and everyone watching the YouTube thing, is he goes like this. He says, I had my books in my right hand and I grabbed his shirt with my left hand. And that's when the god of self-defense hit me. I realized in real life, we're not doing this. Bouncing up and down like we're getting in a taekwondo tournament. We're not shuffling in our feet like we're getting ready to box. We don't have Mills Lane, for those of you who used to love boxing, going, I want a good clean fight. We don't have the guy Big John McCarthy saying, I gave you instructions in your restroom, touch gloves if you
no
want.
Reps on the street.
Right? It's boom. It just happens. So what was amazing is I realized, and this is 1980, I didn't understand anything about startle flinch conversion. I didn't understand cross-extensor reflex. I'd never designed scenarios or anything. I looked at him. I said, are those your books there? He goes, yeah. I said, grab them, grab me, how you held them. And he grabbed his books and and we replicated, we reverse engineered this fight. And I said to him, and what's interesting, we didn't have the term social experiments back then. It was right in 1980, so there wasn't like a social experiment. But what I did is after I reverse engineered the training, I contacted over the next few months different martial arts instructors I knew. And I said, hey, this happened to one of my students. What would you have told them? And they all, and this goes back to your CCTV analysis in a different way, they all criticized my student. They didn't understand the scenario. They all said, well, why did he compromise his hands? Or he got too close, or he didn't have room to do this, or he would have what I did is I said, what is the likelihood of a 15-year-old who has a bully situation to be in school holding his school books? What is the likelihood of a mother leaving a shopping center with her kid, holding one kid hand and groceries in the other hand? Right? And we say, oh, this is where you should conceal carry. Well, guess what? When you flinch, your body contracts, and whatever you're holding on to, you hold tighter. So when this guy started to punch and fire, his reptilian brain hijacked his cognitive brain, which means he didn't have access to Bob and Weaver's slip for a micro moment. And his left hand tightened up on the guy's shirt, and his right hand tightened up on his books, and he was locked and loaded, and his head was just up there like a speedball. Boom, and he got hit, right? But I now can look at the science and the psychology and the physiology of what happened. What I didn't do, and maybe I was just lucky, what I didn't do at that moment, that was me being facetious, everybody listening, is I didn't blame my student, I blamed my fucking self.
Of course you should.
I said, oh my God, I have been teaching you how to spar, not how to protect yourself. And the only way you can learn how to protect yourself is if you study what the bad guy does, not what you think you're going to do.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen to that. Some good preaching here. Which I want to add something to that, and I'm sure you'll have something to add to what I'm about to add. I think a lot of times self-defense instructors, firearms instructors, police academy instructors, they talk about the proverbial bad guy. Or you hear about like the bar fight, right? You're at the bar and it's that chest bumping bullshit, the machismo stuff. Guys like Rory Miller wrote a book and talked a lot about this. He was the prison guard. Was that?
He calls it the monkey dance.
Yeah, exactly. And it's that bullshit. High school guys do it all the time. That is not violence. That is the precursor to violence. And most of the time you can go, hey, dude, you win. Walk Peace away. Out. Yeah. I'm like, when we're talking to our students with firearms, like you're the triple Ds, detect, diffuse, defend. Oftentimes people have to go right to defend, right? There's not 5 seconds or 10-second interaction, because a true criminal predator, the guy that is planning an attack on another human being, I don't care if this person lives or dies, I'm taking what they have because they're food to me. Whatever's in their wallet is what feeds me or my addiction. That's a completely different scenario than two dudes at a concert that want to remember what it was like to get in a fight like they did when, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that people listening need to understand that is a completely different fight. Some douchebag in a bar, a bully in school. I'm not taking anything away from what happened to Mitch, but that is different than
it's all relative and real at the age and the location it's happening.
Completely. That happened to me before. I got my ass beat a handful of times, but I just want to make sure people understand, like, you don't diffuse Jeffrey Dahmer. You don't talk him out of taking you home, chopping you up, and eating you with
And here's an interesting thing philosophically, because I agree philosophically what you're saying, but it's the Star Trek model is like, how did you get into Jeffrey Dahmer's kitchen? Right?
I totally agree. And I think maybe we're talking about two things that are what I just wanted to make sure I added here. Not every scenario is one of the things we talk about in our classes is the legal and ethical side of things. Were your actions that of a reasonable and prudent person? That's what a jury is going to look at when you try to defend yourself for defending yourself. And I think too often the average American citizen assumes that the bad guy is going to do what they would do. Well, I shot him once. Why wouldn't he stop? I had a guy comment on a video that I did with our Blade, the Colonel Blade, and it's like, he goes, "You're a sicko. You stabbed the target 20 times. All it would have taken is once." Well, who f***ing says? Who says it only takes once? Like, you're the bad guy. You're the guy that says I quit. You're now making the decisions for a violent, felonious bad guy on the street. Your turn.
Right. Yeah, so I agree, I disagree, I agree, I disagree. I had a guy at a seminar who no matter what, I always say D1, D2, D3, even if it doesn't happen.
I wasn't saying that you were wrong. I was just saying sometimes, like, I think that's great. I've copied it down, and I'm going to tell that to people and give you credit for it.
Right. So, and I'm not saying that you were saying, hey, sometimes it's just D3, but guess what? Sometimes it is just D3. It depends who you are. But here's the thing is, so D1, D2, D3, most people perceive that as an external thing. D1, situational awareness. I'm looking around, I'm scanning my perimeter, blah, blah, blah. I just watched my Pat Mac video. Okay, I'm ready to go, right? D2, sir, please, I don't want any trouble. Am I being verbal judo now? I want to be safe in court, right? Oh, D3, forceless parallel danger. I'm just going to do a light spear on the guy, right? The most important, I'm going to just
keep going.
The most important part of the D1, D2, D3, and I'm about to blow your mind, Mickey.
Do it.
It's that D1, D2, D3 needs to be internal first. I don't have situational awareness if I don't have self-awareness. My arrogance, my prejudice, my overconfidence, my unconscious bias colors what I actually see, then my situational awareness is really biased. I'm going to go into this shitty bar here because I think I'm a badass. I don't understand how I got beaten up again, right? Because I don't have self-awareness. D2, internal self-talk. What are my beliefs? How do I talk to myself? I'm getting my ass kicked here. I'm always getting in trouble. I'm not worth fighting for. That changes what you do and how you move. And then the D3 is, what will it cost me if I don't fight back? What do I need to do here? I need to be my own bodyguard. I'm going to be the courageous bystander here. So there's an internal part of our training that is the bedrock, the substance under the subject matter of D1, detect and avoid, defuse, D2, defuse and de-escalate, D3, defend, right? And so what I want, and I got what you were saying, but there are, like when I look at anything, like let's go back to the 3 Israeli soldiers. Like that ambush came out of nowhere. Holy, I could see in their roll call, holy, that ice pick. No, excuse me. You walked up on a guy, you chose the location, time, and space. Why did you ask him to show you his papers? Because you suspected that he was a problem. So why were the 3 of you standing together, nobody in a tactical position? And if you understand the Tooler drill or your version of the 21-foot rule, why would you stand super, super close to somebody with your hands down? Because even if he didn't have a knife, he could have punched you in the throat and killed you at that distance. In other words, their D1, D2 was f***ing off. It wasn't on. So we can look at that, and somebody who doesn't understand my system and my research will go, yeah, but that happened out of nowhere. I go, no. Those guys made mistakes on their approach. They made mistakes because they were overconfident. There's 3 of us. We got long guns, we got handguns, we got hand grenades, we got knives. There's 5 guys over there. Let me see your papers. He just stabbed me in the throat. Oh my God. I'm not shooting him. I'm running away from danger because I'm a human being that was just attempted murder, right? And so let me share this story. I had this one guy at a seminar who goes, Mr. Blauer, I agree completely with what you're saying. I love this stuff, so I don't want you to think I'm a contrarian. I'm not trying to be a dick here, but I was once in a bar and I got punched. I got knocked out. I got punched in the back of my head. I didn't even know the guy. So I agree with you, like all this stuff, D1, D2, D3, but here I was in a bar and this guy, like how, if I can't even see him, how can I have situational awareness or try to diffuse it? And I went, wow, like that's an outlier. Like that's, when I'm all my stuff is general principle based. Of course, there's going to be anomalies in stuff, but we should train for what's probably going to happen, not what's possibly going to happen, because that changes everything. What if like aliens attack us? What if a mermaid and a unicorn mate and their kid attacks us? What would that even look like, right? You can go down like this stupid rabbit hole. Let's look at what's frequently going to happen, start there, and then if you want to go, well, you know what? I do want to take this extra course. I do want to learn this. So I look at this guy and I go, like, that's the anomaly. Like I said, but I'm curious because I've never heard of something like this, but I'm not saying it didn't happen to you. So you were just at this bar and a guy knocked you out with a shot from behind. He goes, yeah. And I go, like, that's fascinating. You're okay? He goes, yeah. He says, like, I agree with what you're saying. I just wanted to throw that out there because I thought maybe you'd help me understand like how that happened. I go, and you didn't know this guy? He goes, nope. And you'd never seen him before. Hesitation. I go, you've seen him or you hadn't seen him? He says, well, I didn't know him. I go, well, so you saw him. Like, when did you see him last? There's something you're not telling me.
Yeah.
He goes, well, I kind of had words with him the week earlier at the bar. I said, so hold on a second. A week earlier at the same bar, you bumped into this guy. You guys did some whose penis is bigger dance, had some words with him, and then you went back to the same bar and sat with your back to the bar. And he kind of looks at me and everyone in the seminar is looking. He doesn't answer me, but his body language is like, yeah. I said, dude, you had a week to prepare for that punch. Right? So there's always that element of, oh no, it happened out of nowhere. I go, well, wait a minute. Like, you had 7 days of D1. Like, and you still got hit. That's your fault, buddy.
So when I everything you just said, 100% agree with. When I just was talking about was not that we couldn't thresh it out. That's kind of the reason I said you don't always get the D and the D, the internal.
Yeah, hey, Mickey, listen, you were saying there's a difference between hey, that's my parking spot fight. And,
yes.
and somebody with a gun in your face going, get in my trunk. There's one that's like secondary crime scene. You're going to get raped and murdered. And one is a guy who's having a bad day. And in both cases, you can be murdered in this day.
Sure. Somebody just sent me a video the other day. It was Ludacris watching it. The guy's like, what would you have done? It was
Ludacris, the rap star, was watching it?
No. It was a road rage incident. Apparently, the driver there was a car and a motorcycle. The car is in front of the motorcycle, and they're in some kind of crazy gridlock. I think it was LA. They're in traffic. And the video starts with the motorcyclist filming the guy in the car pointing a gun at him. So the viewer is a guy in a car screaming, "You mother effer, get the hell away from me." And he's pointing a gun out his cracked window. The motorcycle driver is screaming, "You son of a bitch, what the hell? It's rush hour traffic. I can't go anywhere." So these guys are having some kind of stupid road rage incident. This conversation goes on like for a minute and a half where this motorcyclist is screaming at a guy pointing a gun at him. So people are commenting to me like, what would you have done? Would you have shot him? No, I wouldn't have got off my motorcycle in the beginning to walk up to a guy.
What are you thinking?
And then when he pointed a gun at me, I wouldn't have continued to have a debate with him as his fingers on the freaking trigger of a gun pointed at him. I'm like thinking, what the hell? So they have this dance go back and forth, and then the video just ends. So apparently they decided not to fight about it. But average people look at this stuff. When I say average, I don't mean like less than human, but like not having this depth of knowledge on violence And I think they give a lot of very evil people too much credit for having some sense of justice, which they don't, which is what makes them evil. And I think a lot of times, like you just said, you could die in either of those scenarios. People don't realize that getting punched in the face can end your life, or break your eye socket, or break your jaw, or fold your teeth in. That it's not just fun and games sometimes. Like, I have people say to me, "You're a pussy, you use a gun. Why don't you fight like with your fists?" Because I've done that. I have fake teeth. That's not that awesome. Like I don't want those things to happen.
Yeah, listen, I alluded to this earlier, and I was just like Googling here, making sure I had the right name. But in 2003, Alex Gong, if I'm not screwing up I hope I am. I apologize if I'm messing this up. He's a world champion Thai fighter. Was in Thai shorts and gloves doing pad work outside of his gym on a street level with his students, and a car comes speeding by, loses control, and hits his car or a student's car and speeds off, hit and run.
Oh, I remember this story.
And then gets jammed up in a little bottleneck of traffic. Well, Alex is there, and this guy's got like 4% body fat, world champion Thai boxer, outside running a class in front of his students. And he runs after the guy in Thai shorts and glove, is what I understood, runs up to the door, punches the window, like, "Get out of your car," and the guy shoots him through the door and kills him. And I say this with utmost respect, Alex confused the categories. You remember my whole category rant?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's a asocial who stole a car and has a gun. And if you're a scared pussy and you're using a gun as a tool of intimidation, and you see a world champion kickboxer dripping sweat, punching your car window, and you have a gun within arm's reach, are you going to get out of the car and fight him mano a mano, or are you going to shoot him through the door?
Right.
And so there's a number of stories of really, really accomplished martial artists who, there's one last year, a well-known black belt jiu-jitsu guy who tried to stop an armed robber on a bus in Brazil, who tried to do some sort of disarm, and the guy got shot in the face and killed. And a lot of it isn't, and listen carefully, everybody, I'm not putting down any martial art. I'm saying that if you don't study violence and you don't study fear management, that just dropping in and inserting some complex motor skill move you did in class 7 times or 70 times is not the same as doing it on a bus or the side of a road when you're dealing with an asocial who's not going to, cooperate with you and start the drill the way you started it in class. There's a whole different, and that's why I say, when I peel the onion after almost 4 decades of teaching, when I peel the onion for everything, it comes down to, if you said to me, "I got an hour to spend with you, what can we do? I wanted to learn this. I go, let's talk about fear. Because I believe that if I can help you understand how to manage fear, that you will figure the rest out. I really believe that there's a lot of evidence to that. There are people who should not have, survived that fire, that car wreck, that attack, that bankruptcy, and what they did was, if I peel like, oh, he fought his way back, he had this stolen from him, and his wife left him in his company, and he rebuilt Phoenix from the ashes and all that. Underneath that is somebody who managed their fear. Because there's other people that kill themselves. There's other people that go on welfare. There's other people who just, and there are people who just roll over and hide under a desk. And then there's people who charge the threat. And that's the metaphor.
So people that are listening to you, not everybody's going to be able to come and take a Tony class, even though we want them to. What's a takeaway for them on how they can begin to delve into this? How can they begin to challenge their own fears? How can they begin to, I know for me, when I talk about this stuff with certain people, for me, the biggest challenge is always the ego. A lot of men are like, well, I'm not scared of anything. And right. I know that that's not entirely what you're talking about. You're talking about all kinds of stuff way deeper than just that macho shit, like I'm not scared of anything. For me, it's got to start with a level of you say peeling back the onion. I like to think about it like just bearing the soul, so to speak. I'm not going to be scared of what you think of me or what I want to know. I want to know what is. I want to know how I am going to get better and grow. So somebody that is in that mindset, I want to take what this guy's saying to heart. Where do they begin?
Listen, I got a bunch of websites. If they just Google me, there's a lot of free content. There's I get deep into a ton of podcasts. Do you post show notes?
Yes.
Like when you do that, I'll send you some links. I've got one page up that's got a list of every podcast I've been on.
Perfect. And your podcast is
I've got my own podcast called No Fear, ironically, and it's spelled KNOW, fear. But I've been on a bunch of other really cool podcasts where when I've got somebody on my show, and you've been on my show, I'm more interviewing them for somebody to learn more about what I'm doing. It happens in a deeper way when I get interviewed. So I'll send you the show link to that. That's really like Googling and reading the articles. And listen, transparency is everything. If you're sitting there, it's like Mickey just said, guys are macho, type A. Are you afraid? I mean, I always tell the story. I was down at Fort Bragg, got down there a couple of days early to give a course for a special group down there. And I'm meeting the guys at the local Starbucks. And one of them on Saturday says, "Hey, I'm going jumping this afternoon. You want to come?" And I go, "Like, you mean like jumping up and down?" And he goes, No, you know what I mean, like jumping out of an airplane. I said, No, thanks. I'm good. He goes, "Oh, Mr. Fear Management, come on." I said, "Look, I've done it twice. I did it once. The first time I thought it was a fluke. I think I passed out. So I did it again with my eyes open. And I tandem jumped, and I'm afraid of heights, and I don't like jumping out of airplanes. So I did it as a fear management exercise, and I know I can do it. And so I'm deciding not to do it." And he goes, and he laughs. He goes, "Oh, I thought you're like Mr. Fear Manager." I go, I am managing my fear by not going. And he laughs, and we laugh. And I say to him, I go, "Hey, but on the subject of fear, are you afraid to jump out of an airplane?" And he goes, "Absolutely not. I go every time I can." I said, "Okay, would you let me pack your chute for you today? I got a surprise for you." And he goes, "There's no way you're touching it." And I looked at him, and when he stopped laughing, I went, "That is fear. We just call it different things." In other words, his ritual of who packs a chute and how he looks at it and check it is, where you and I are going, "Oh my God, I don't know if I can sign this release." He's meticulously looking at his equipment. It's just different strategic relationships with fear management.
Dealing with it. Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So for anyone listening here going, "I'm not afraid, I'm not going to just check out this Blauer stuff." If I say to you, "Hey, you need to go to this tactical medicine class, and you got to go do this thing here where they do these simulations," you go, "Man, I'm not good around blood. I don't want to." That's fear, right? You're a great shooter, but you would know how to save somebody's life on a negligent discharge on the range with a student. Like, come on, man, right? And so all of it is like, I know, this is so funny. I've been teaching. I've been on the road since 1993. And that's when I closed my school. And like 1 year I was on the road 260 days. Crazy. Wow. And I'm training a lot of tier 1 groups. And here I am in a room with, let's say, like a SWAT unit, where they're talking about shootouts and gunfights and things that had happened, and we're doing scenarios, and I'm having trouble getting the guys to ask me questions in front of their peers. Who's got a question about this? Anybody? No questions? Okay, let's take a break. 2 guys come up to me. "Hey man, I got a question. Why didn't you ask it in front of the group?" And I'm like, these guys are afraid of public speaking. Like most of the world. They're not afraid to fast rope and shinny up to a house and kick down a door and get in a gunfight, but they're afraid to put their hand up in a class. Like, we all have different, and that's why I say that your ability to look at fear, not the fear of, but just the physiology of fear, the butterflies in your stomach, the sweating, the shorter breath, and have the self-awareness to go, wow, I'm afraid of public speaking. I'm afraid to tell my kids or my wife, I love you. I'm afraid to say I'm sorry. I'm afraid to, like how many stand-up fighters are afraid to go to take jiu-jitsu, right? And they'll tell you, well, I don't let anyone get that close to me. But what they're really afraid of is grappling, right?
Looking stupid and yeah.
Losing, starting over. And so really when suddenly you start to look at fear as a fuel that's going to help you self-actualize, you suddenly, and you got to be, can't be cavalier about this, right? There are some things you're supposed to be afraid of, right?
Right.
I don't believe in gravity anymore.
Right. Fire can't burn me.
But I'm jumping off of this building to show in this pussified world, I identify as a butterfly now, and I'm jumping off this building. I think gravity is racist. And like, oh yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
But anyways, the message here is, guys and gals, is that if all of us were taught how to look at fear from a psychological point of view and taught how to navigate it and use it as a fuel, we have an acronym I share people. We have a cool t-shirt that you should get. And the t-shirt is fear. And the is an acronym for face it, understand it, confront it, or control it. And then K for know it. F is for face, U is for understand, C is to confront, right? But at no point in the training do we say, oh, now that you've done our fear management class, you no longer have fear. That's why we spell it no fear. Get to know fear, and that will help you become a better, stronger person.
I love it. I've enjoyed every conversation that you and I have had. I don't think we've ever, other than a few wisecracks, ever just talked about the weather or a sporting event or modern men's fashion or
right.
Usually we talk about this kind of stuff, and that's probably because of how we're both wired and predisposed. But one of the reasons I wanted to have this conversation with you, one, I have a different group of people that listen to our stuff that maybe don't know who you are, and it's a damn shame. I think this modern world of the amount of media that's out there, especially like in the combatives world, and if you've got a big social media following, you can become more relevant than somebody that's done 40 years of hard work like you. So, guys, check out Tony's stuff. Take a class. You've got affiliate trainers, people that work for you. I don't know what the correct term is. Add coaches that you guys have seminars around the country. Look the stuff up. Go take a class. You've got volumes of articles and things like that you've published over the years. And as you said, tons of, you've got videos. I think you guys have done stuff with,
Panteo.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think of it.
So we've got free stuff online, and we got stuff you can buy online. Our stuff through Panteo's kind of right up your audience, some close quarter weapon stuff. And your audience will be, I'm assuming 99% of them are people interested in concealed carry and self-defense with a weapon. And here's the thing I always tell people with that, especially, there's always the 10 comments on every shooting going, that's why I carry. And the reality is, folks, unless the gun is duct taped to your hand, when you're at close proximity to a active shooter or sudden shooting, you're going to start a flinch. Your body naturally throws itself offline. Your hands come up to protect, push away danger, cover your head. So regardless of where you keep your gun, you still have to weather the ambush, convert the flinch, and then access your weapon. To do that, you need to manage your fear. And so at extreme close quarters, you still need, like, to me, the s.p.e.a.r system is the equivalent of a modern organic airbag that's built into your body. And so boom, that deploys, and now I got to weaponize it. I create that workspace, by pushing away the danger and then practicing start a flinch, convert, weaponize the flinch, and then transition to my weapon or my knife. And so anyone, I just want to put that in context for a firearms community, that the caveat and the difference would be is if you are sitting with your back to the restaurant and you've got the best angle and you're super far away, and somebody comes in and starts shooting people at the front, guess what? Your ass is still going to get small. You're still going to stop chewing. You might have a micro flinch, but it won't be a major flinch. You still need to manage your fear. You still need to convert all that and still access your weapon. So,
one of the things I think you just touched on, somebody could have a life of martial arts skills, and they can take what we've talked about, which is what the beauty of everything I think we've discussed, and they can apply it to what they already know. They can, it's not throw everything else out, it's take this and make yourself better. And everything we've talked about, you can apply, as you said, to relationships, public speaking, whatever. This managing of fear is not just about dealing with bad guys. It is, and this is where you and I connected initially. It is the totality of our life, making ourselves better. I think that's a lot of my followers. They carry guns. They want to be protectors of them and theirs, but they also want to live a long, full life and not be assholes in the process.
And to piggyback on that, the reality is, you're going to have confrontations on a daily basis with traffic, with an asshole in an elevator, with somebody in line in a movie theater, so on a daily or a weekly or a monthly basis, that at no point should your gun ever come out. And you need to understand how to regulate your breathing, how to diffuse, how to be situationally aware and go, I'm going to avoid this, and, and so on and so forth. So there's a lot more practicality to this. We do a seminar called No Fear, which is more of a corporate gig that has nothing to do with self-defense unless you think of self-defense holistically. Like what should I eat? Where should I live? What should I read? Because that's all psychological self-defense. So we do that, but I tell people, they go like, the reason, aside from being a lifelong martial artist and having a fascination with self-defense and understanding how to protect myself, my family from violence, is that the fastest way, the most transcendent way to understand how to manage fear is when you study violence, right? Because I could say, hey, I want you to come to this public speaking thing. Every Friday we get together and we do talks and we do monologues, and it's kind of scary. You got to come up and I give you Shakespeare and I give you this comedy and all that stuff. But that doesn't help you defend yourself, right? It just helps you where if you go through a bunch of courses with you, with some of our other, colleagues and peers, with me, and you start to understand that, yeah, I learn all this weapon handling and all this, but I'm also learning how to manage my fear and make decisions under duress. That allows me to put my hand up in an audience and go, I got a question, right? It transfers the other way, but it doesn't transfer the first way necessarily.
Get the sale that you were afraid to ask for, ask the girl.
Right.
Go out on the date. Yeah, whatever. Right.
Yeah. Fear throttles everything we do, who we talk to, how much money we make, where we live, how much weight we lift. Right. And most importantly, whether or not we protect ourselves or not.
Amen. I think that's a good point to end it on. I am blessed to know you, Tony. I'm happy to see that you're in good health, kicking ass. Scott Puckett, a friend of mine, mutual friend. Yep. I think he's running one of your programs next month out in.
Scott has been training under me for 6-7 years, 8 years. So he came through as he's changed police agencies twice in the time I've known him, but hosted some courses, went to a bunch of courses, good athlete, very passionate. So he picked the stuff up fast, was good enough to make it on our mobile training team, helped out running some classes. He's hosting a course in the Carolinas.
North Carolina. Yeah, he's now with Sorenex.
Yep.
Sorenex Tactical. I brought it up because I might run down there and check out what they're doing. So
yeah, please say hi to Bert. I've known him for years. In fact, I've got one of his original GHDs in my gym.
Oh, cool. Very cool. You work out?
I do. Can't you tell? That's what I love. I love bumping into somebody and they go, hey, you still working out? And I'm like, what do you mean? Are you still working out? That sounds like that's the same as saying to someone like me, that's the same as saying
you really let yourself go.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. That's funny. That's funny stuff. So just Google Tony Blauer, Blauer, and you'll find tons of articles, websites, so on and so forth. Something that he alluded to, but I'll tell you, go pay for some content. Guys like this, there's so much stuff out there for free. Go pay for something because people can't exist not getting paid. It's annoying as hell to me when people steal or just take content. I'll have guys send me video or questions, and they're like, hey, dude, get an XYZ gun and film one of your high-quality videos that takes 8 to 20 hours of editing and post it up so I can watch it for free. You know, that's how I read it.
Right.
You know, like, yeah, let me jump right on that. So
right.
Buy the books, buy the videos, attend the courses. All of that stuff is how guys like Tony exist. And
thank you.
Yeah, I think it's legitimate. After I've got more into this online space, I appreciate artists when they complain about people pirating their material. I mean, it's total horseshit, man. It's horseshit. I ain't gonna pay for that Panteo video because there's all these guys that just uploaded them to YouTube. Screw you.
Yeah, and they're like that's like $15 or $20. You know,
right.
A lot of the stuff, I've got a video out on women's safety. You know. On kids' safety.
A policeman's just walked into my house here, and I'm lucky I've got a gun out.
Nice.
Doing a podcast. Give me 1 sec. This is one of our local coppers. Hey, you know Paul Sharp?
I sure do.
This is his brother. Do you want to come say hi?
Hey, Paul Sharp's brother.
Tony Blauer.
Hello, sir. How are you?
Man? Good to meet you.
Out here. All right, I'll let
You're leaving?
No, I said I can't hear.
Oh, you can't hear. Yeah, you can't hear. I've got the headphones on. He said, hello, nice to meet you.
Oh.
Give me 2 seconds.
No problem. Yeah.
Well, that was a good way to end it.
Mm-hmm.
I'll talk to you soon. You said you were
being arrested.
Me being arrested, yeah. those we found your porn cache online. I'll talk to you soon, guys. Check out Tony. Thank you for watching. If you're checking this out on YouTube, subscribe. We post new content every week. We love hearing from you. Leave some comments. And I want to see you guys commenting on Tony's stuff online and passing the stuff on. The stuff can save your life or the life of another. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it.
Peace out. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, Mickey.
Bye now.
Visit our website, CarryTrainer.com, for information about classes held throughout the U.S., CarryTrainer apparel, and upcoming projects. You can also email us at training@CarryTrainer.com for information about setting up your own private course or speaking engagement. Training@CarryTrainer.com or CarryTrainer.com.